Hey guys, Time itself here, back with some more Guild Wars 2 beta footage. This is all the footage I got from the beta event, so we're going to have to wait till the next one, or until the game actually comes out before I can bring you any more. But I did want to talk about this. It's an interesting thing they've tried to do here, and I'm not entirely sure how it's going to work out. It does make the game a little bit more challenging, but it's fairly interesting, and I'm glad they're trying things. Now, there are two ways to talk about this. One is to say that they've taken the original Guild Wars control setup and basically removed the select nearest target toggle between targets and call targets for your team. That whole mechanic is gone. Instead, most of your attacks are AoE, and there's a fairly generous auto-targeting feature. Though if you actually do click on something and target it, if you have a directed attack, it will go at the guy. There's also ground attacks, where you just target an area on the ground and it goes off there. Now, one of the tricks is that this could make it, if you're in a laggy situation, it might get rather unpleasant. But what it does do is it really highlights that you're trying to control three separate things, mostly because instead of the target you've selected, it's where you're facing. If you have a ranged attack, or if where you're standing, that really decides what you're going to hit with your attack. So it highlights the separation between trying to control movement, targeting, and the camera. So all three of these. This is kind of unusual for a game. So you've got like an FPS game, and where you face, that's where you're targeting. Or you might think a twin-stick shooter, some kind of arcadey game. You're not controlling the camera at all, it just moves around as necessary. Kind of similar with an RTS game. A lot of these 3D RTS games, you can zoom in, zoom out, rotate the camera, but you don't do that while you're trying to play the game. And when you do move the camera, you kind of jerk it around, it doesn't move smoothly. And what games normally do is what Guild Wars 1 had done, which is give you a targeting system. Lock onto this thing I'm generally facing at, and then I can select between them, and all my attacks get directed at that target, and if I'm not in range, my guy will try to get in range before doing something. Now, there's actually one more thing going on here, and that is you don't have to be standing still in order to use a lot of your skills. Lots of the basic melee attacks, ranged attacks, you can do on the run. Lots of spells, even some of the ground targeted stuff, you can be running and casting, and there it goes. So there's a lot more possibility here to do some really, really awesome things with strafing and running and firing off skills in directions that your camera necessarily isn't facing, or oh my gosh, it's absolutely mind-blowing at first, but it's really cool, and I was trying to experiment with how I could make the best use of it. But before I can really get into that, I need to explain some of the how as to the controls work and some of the restrictions they've put in. First, they generally try to tie the camera direction to the direction the player is facing, though it's not necessary. In general, if you're standing still, it doesn't matter where the camera's pointed. As soon as you start running, they try to make the camera point towards where you're running. You can turn this off, but it can get a little messy. If you pan the camera with the left, grab the screen and pan around with the left mouse button, it will let you move around freely while you're running, but as soon as you let go, it will snap back to where your guy is running. If you move with the right mouse button as you're running, it will make your player turn, and this makes for some really good, very fine adjustments, like what mice are good for, in trying to run exactly where you want to. I know I'll line up across the zone with the left mouse button and just let the guy go, and that comes back to the whole running around for long periods of time earlier. So the thing is, there's not much use for the left mouse button. Yeah, you can look around, but it snaps back so fast that you can't grab onto a target. Now again, you can turn this off, but by default, really anything other than just taking a look around, it's not too useful. Now, if we talk about the keyboard setup, you can strafe, and that, well, obviously that won't necessarily change the camera because you're not changing the direction you're facing. If you turn, it's pretty clunky, I guess is the way to put it, just because you're tapping the keyboard to turn, and it's slow. And, because the attacks are cones, yeah, you can kind of direct things like that, but it's not very good for any kind of precise targeting. Okay, but this does lead me to the first kind of thing I was trying to mess around with, and that is strafing one direction, holding right mouse, and then slowly kind of turning, using the right mouse to kind of try to control the turn as I try to circle strafe around my target. And actually, it's really tricky and hard to do effectively, but it does work. And you can keep sidestepping and keep using your skills and still stay facing your target. It's just really challenging. And, you know, if things can get really messy really quickly, but that is an option. Making that easier, making so it wasn't so hard to have to pick up the mouse to keep circling in the same direction and trying to hold down the strafe key while pushing the skill buttons. Yeah, because if you can imagine the kind of finger gymnastics that are involved there, but it does work, and it is a possibility in this game, and I think there might be some use to it. I can probably avoid a fair amount of damage like that. It's one of those things we'll just have to see as we get more playtime in this game. Another thing I was messing around with was trying to run away from things. I found myself doing that a fair amount, honestly, is running away and trying to use skills behind me. Now, obviously, stuff that I have to be facing I can't use like that, but like this number 3, this is a staff targeted attack, I can put that behind me if I can see behind me. And so I go ahead and go in the options, and you've found that, yes, they still have the look behind me button, so if I run in one direction, hold the look behind me button, press the skill button, and then click where I want it, I can cast spells on the people who are trying to chase me down. And yeah, I think this is fairly obvious how this could be quite useful. The thing is, you have to set that look behind me hotkey. It's not set by default, so whatever you feel like making it. But not only is that going to be useful in using skills behind me, also since I can look behind me while running forward, remember you don't want to run backwards, running backwards is quite slow, since I can see what's going on behind me, I might see an attack coming in and I would know when to dodge. I can't just constantly dodge or run out of stamina, but if I can time it right, because I can see it coming, yeah, that might make quite a difference in getting away from a large group of people running to my team or running into a defensive structure. You know, something, just getting away, making it more effective. So that seems pretty important and is something I'm definitely going to have to try to remember to do. Oh, what it really comes down to is that controlling all 3 separate things, that's why games don't normally do it, is quite a challenge. Then you've got the W, A, S, D, Q, and E keys to control movement, the skill keys on the numbers, and then the F keys if appropriate, and then, yeah, this gets kind of tricky. It's going to take a lot of work to get down and get really good at, but hey, I'm looking forward to the full release of this game, and we'll see what we can do. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you later.